The contractions started sharp and sudden, like knives twisting in my stomach. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, whispering to myself, "Not now, please, not now." The highway stretched out empty under the burning sun, and my old car rattled before jerking to a stop. A hiss of air cut through the silence. Flat tire. My chest tightened. I was in labor, my body screaming, and I was stranded. I fumbled for my phone, sweat dripping down my forehead, my hands trembling. I dialed home. "Dad, it's me. The tire's blown. I can't move the car. I need help. Please." The line was quiet, then his voice came, sharp, dismissive. "Where exactly are you?" "Highway 14, near exit 9. I'm having contractions. I can't—" He cut me off with a laugh. "Figures. Always breaking down just like your life. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video." Before I could respond, I saw it. A familiar car in the distance. My parents' SUV pulling a trailer, my sister's shiny convertible perched on it like a throne. They slowed as they came closer. My eyes lit up with desperate hope. Thank God, they'll stop. They didn't. Dad rolled down his window as they passed, smirk carved into his face. "She can't be late. You'll survive walking." Mom leaned over from the passenger seat, her sunglasses hiding nothing of her disdain. "You always wanted attention. Well, scream all you want now. At least your sister has somewhere important to be." Laughter drifted back as the SUV roared past, dragging my sister's car behind it like a trophy. I stood frozen, one hand on my belly, the other gripping the side of my dead car. My baby kicked inside me as if reacting to their cruelty. I sank to the asphalt, tears mixing with sweat, contractions stealing my breath. Cars sped by, some honking, others ignoring me like I was invisible. My mind spun. They had chosen her schedule, her comfort, her damn car over my life and my child's. With each wave of pain, a memory returned. Dad slamming doors in my face when I needed help with school bills, Mom sneering, "Your sister deserves everything you don't." Jason laughing at my hand-me-down shoes. Years of being second best, years of being told I wasn't worth the gas it would take to pick me up. And now, when I was most vulnerable, they had proved it in the cruelest way possible. My phone buzzed weakly in my palm, battery low. I called an old coworker, Marissa, who lived 2 exits down. When she answered, I barely choked out the words, "I'm in labor, flat tire, please." She came. She didn't ask why my own family hadn't. She just came, wide-eyed, hauling me into her back seat, speeding toward the hospital with one hand on my shoulder, repeating, "Breathe. You're gonna be okay." As the hospital lights came into view, fury built in me stronger than the pain. My parents thought I'd crawl. They thought I'd beg again. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't just fighting for me. I was fighting for my baby. And as I lay in that hospital bed, clutching my newborn daughter hours later, I whispered to her, "They left us on the highway, but I'll make sure they never drive past us again without paying for it." The days after my daughter's birth were a blur of sleepless nights, cheap takeout boxes stacked on the counter of Marissa's small apartment, and the quiet hum of betrayal replaying in my head. Every time my daughter whimpered, I remembered the heat of the asphalt under my knees, the sound of my father's laugh, the shimmer of my mother's sunglasses as she told me I'd survive walking. The hospital had been chaos, no visitors, no congratulations from family. Just silence. The nurses asked if I wanted them called, and I shook my head. I knew exactly what they'd say if they showed up. "We told you so." I signed the forms myself, held my baby myself, cried alone into her blanket when the contractions turned into cries of exhaustion. When we were discharged, I called my parents once more, against my better judgment. My voice was cracked. "She's here. Your granddaughter." Silence. Then Mom's cold voice, "Don't expect us to babysit, we're busy." Dad chimed in, almost amused. "We have no time for another mouth to feed. Jason's helping us with the new car payments for your sister. That's family responsibility. You chose your mess. Handle it." Click. I stared at the phone until the screen went black. That was the breaking point. The highway had been humiliation, but this was the knife twist. My child wasn't even worth a moment of their attention. Meanwhile, my sister was everywhere. Photos of her new convertible appeared all over Facebook with captions like, "Can't be late when you've got family who's got your back." Smiling selfies with mom in matching sunglasses. Dad beaming behind the wheel of the SUV. Jason tagging along like a sidekick. They flaunted loyalty to her, devotion to her, while I nursed my daughter on a borrowed couch with 2 sets of clothes and half a paycheck. But I wasn't weak anymore. Every cruel comment, every laugh at my expense, every sneer, they were bricks I was stacking into a wall. I wasn't just angry, I was focused. I started planning in the quiet hours. Rocking my daughter to sleep, I mapped their routines in my mind. Dad's business lunches with his golfing buddies. Mom's endless charity luncheons where she bragged about family values. My sister's obsession with posting everything online. They lived for appearances, for status, for the applause of people who didn't know the truth. That was the thread I would pull until their entire world unraveled. Marissa, bless her heart, gave me more than a couch. She gave me advice, a shoulder, and one sentence that stuck. If they think you're disposable, prove you can make them irrelevant. That line sat in my chest like fire. I knew what my revenge had to be. Not fists, not screaming, not begging for apologies. It had to be smarter. It had to strike them where they worshipped their image, their reputation, their pride. I began small. Screenshots of my sister's perfect life posts paired with my eviction notice quietly slipped into inboxes of people my parents respected most. I didn't put my name on it. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke louder than I could. Then I went further. I reached out to the local reporter who once covered my father's business. "Would you like a story?" I asked, voice calm, almost detached. "About a family who left their daughter on a highway in labor to tow their other daughter's car?" There was silence on the line. Then the reporter said, "Tell me everything." For the first time in years, I felt my chest unclench. I was no longer the girl they laughed at on the highway. I was the woman sharpening the blade of truth, ready to cut through their lies. And I swore, as I looked down at my daughter's sleeping face, that they would never again drive past me without the world knowing exactly who they were. The morning the story broke, the sun looked like any other, but I could feel the air shifting. I had learned how to wait, the hard, patient kind that chews the edges off of arrogance, and today, all the small, careful moves I'd made came together like gears. The reporter ran the piece right before Mom's big luncheon. A neat, professional story with my eviction notice scanned in, a timeline of the highway call, and screenshots of their glossy posts, where they brayed about family while I was delivering my daughter. He'd also verified details with the hospital, and the piece quoted a nurse confirming I'd been admitted after calling for help. It wasn't viral fireworks, it was pointed, undeniable, and it landed in the exact room Mom had planned to glow in. I walked into that luncheon wearing the same plain jacket I'd worn to interviews. Clean, unremarkable, not a single showy brand. People glanced because I wasn't invisible anymore. Mom stood at the head table under a swath of hydrangeas, smiling like a queen who'd already been crowned. Jason flanked her, preening at his phone, while Dad told the table about pride in the family and how sacrifices were worth it when they built success. The mayor was there. Sponsors were there. Cameras, clinking forks. Their audience. I handed a copy of the paper to the woman handling guest relations and without shouting, told her in a calm voice, "You should read this." She paled, then passed it along. A waiter's face went white as he read the first paragraph. Conversations stopped mid-chew. My mother's practiced smile faltered. She mouthed something at Dad. "What is this?" But he only scoffed, as if scorn could fix a headline. Someone from the paper stood up and asked, "Is there a response from the family?" There were a few murmurs, and then the mayor coughed politely. I didn't shout. I didn't dramatize. I simply told the truth. One plain sentence at a time. How the tire blew, how they drove past with my sister's car on a tow, how Dad said I'd survive walking, how Mom told me not to expect them to help. I offered the eviction notice, the call logs, the screenshots. I handed the reporter my phone with the hospital verification and let facts do the work. I watched their faces the way I used to watch my reflection in store windows, searching for cracks. Dad's jaw clenched so hard I thought I could see the vein beat. Mom's hand flew to her throat. Jason's confidence dissolved into a fast, petulant red. At first, they tried the usual move. Denials. A rushed, "This is private family business." But the reporter didn't want gossip. He wanted answers. He called a board member of the charity Mom had used to polish her image. The board didn't want headlines about donors getting cozy while a daughter slept in her car. By sundown, invitations that had once been automatic were being returned with formal notes. Sponsors asked for audits. The charity's events coordinator, someone who'd always smiled broadly at Mom, declined to comment and then quietly told a few donors she'd been fielding uncomfortable questions. A local boutique that had supplied dresses for Mom's last gala called to say they were pausing associations while they reviewed their partnerships. Jason's small brand deals evaporated. One manager texted him that weekend, "Company policy, no affiliation with family scandals." He smashed his phone against the wall in the garage. His scream had nothing to do with me and everything to do with reputation losing value. That night, when Mom finally called, hand shaking, trying to keep the words smooth, she begged me to consider the family's reputation. Dad left a voicemail that sounded small and brittle. We'll handle this." I listened to them fumble, and for the first time, I felt something close to pity. Not for them, never that, but for how thin their armor had always been. It had been all applause and never any real weight. I didn't celebrate with gloating. Instead, I did what I'd always promised my daughter I would do. I rebuilt. With some of the money I saved, with small grants arranged quietly by the charity director who'd believed me, I put down a deposit on a modest 2-room apartment. I started a small fund, informal at first, that paid emergency rent for people the way I'd once needed it. The fundraiser was tiny but steady. Neighbors who'd read the article slipped in donations. The irony that my mother had spent so much cultivating donors and I was turning their sympathy and money into roofs over heads was not lost on me. I used their image-obsessed networks the way they'd used them to show off. For good. Neighbors stopped bringing casserole plates to Mom's parties. People who once valued her name on donation lists stopped answering her social calls. Dad's business friends began to treat him like a man with a cracked ledger, courteous at meetings but distant. Jason's followers were still there in numbers, but brands didn't return his calls. He drifted through the house taking more selfies and getting fewer bookings. The cost I exacted wasn't about money. I turned the currency they prized, status, into something practical. I repurposed their applause into rent checks and microgrants. I took their trophies of taste and used them to fund programs for people they had ignored. I didn't burn their life down. I redirected the heat so it warmed those who needed it. Months later, Dad met me on the sidewalk by accident. He said it was just errands. He looked across at the modest community board hanging above the door to the small drop-in space I ran and said nothing. Mom, who'd once preened for plaques, saw a ribbon cutting for a free clinic I helped fund and did not attend. Jason scrolled through a feed full of his staged luxury shots and muttered about bad timing. When I hold my daughter now, hair longer, laughter easy, I remember the highway, the hiss of rubber, the cruel window rolled down. Sometimes I tell her the truth in little words, about people who chose comfort over compassion. And then, I tell her what I taught them without shouting, that the only thing worse than being ignored is thinking your absence doesn't matter. They told me I'd survive walking. I did, walking straight past the porch where their invitations still gathered dust, to a place where, every weekday, a kid who would have slept on a curb can come in from the cold and get a warm sandwich. Their faces went pale, yes, but the thing I wanted most wasn't that their cheeks emptied of color, it was that their trick of using people like props was exposed, and that the props I reclaimed were being used to keep people inside, under a roof. Revenge, in the end, wasn't a scream. It was practical, slow, and public enough that it changed the town's memory of them. It gave me a small life and a larger purpose. Every time I hand a rent check to someone who looks like they might be the next person left on a highway, I think of my parents' laugh and tuck it into my pocket like a coin, spent on something better. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.